dressed in loincloths and furry boots. Auburn Act man-o'-war were scarcely less homoerotic than the Village People, while the heaviness of Staten Island's own Twisted Sister was somewhat undermined by the fact that its members chose to apply makeup to their faces, albeit in a slapdash manner that did nothing to obscure the fact that band looked more like dockers than rock stars. In fact, despite that group's thuggish punk-tinged sound, Twisted Sister's music was far enough removed from that made by Hetfield's band that vocalist Dee Snider found himself entirely bewildered after seeing the group perform at one of its New York concerts. Upon meeting the group, Snider opined that while they seemed like good people, he still reckoned their chances of making it were nil. In the context of the time, it is not difficult to see why he arrived at this conclusion. In 1983, heavy metal was one of contemporary music's most flamboyant genres. Yet here came Metallica, dressed as if they lived in a squat. But if New York was not yet entirely enamored of the teenagers from California, the same could be said of the visitors' attitude to the Empire State. When Whiplash writer Trice Rayfield collected Hetfield and Ulrich in the parking lot of Rock and Roll Heaven that spring afternoon, his first enquiries centered around the duo's impressions of the East Coast. "The bangers out here aren't as fanatic," answers Ulrich, as his bandmate can be heard belching in the background. Although the drummer does concede that the reception his group are afforded gets better with every gig, nonetheless the inevitable comparison comes not to Metallica's experiences in Los Angeles. LA was the fucking worst, being Hetfield's take on his hometown, in some of the few words he manages to string together amid his drummer's dominance of the interview, but rather, San Francisco. They're not as crazy. Out there in San Francisco, the first 10 rows are just hair and sweat and bobbing heads, almost like punk gigs. They're just all over each other and shit. One of the striking things about the interview is the certainty with which Ulrich speaks of the future plans set in place for his group. He confirms that while Metallica are a San Francisco-based band, it would be unlikely that the quartet would perform in the Bay Area until the autumn, which they did on September 1st at the Key Club in Palo Alto. He also states that his band are set to enter a recording studio on May 10th in order to record their debut album, the sessions for which would last 2.5 weeks. So definitive and authoritative are the drummer's answers that the resemblance between the Lars Ulrich of 1983 and the drummer 30 years on is not so much striking as it is unsettling. Ulrich also revealed that Metallica's choice of producer for their debut album, at the time set to be titled Metal Up Your Ass, was Chris Tsangarides, a man known at the time for his collaborations with Judas Priest and Thin Lizzy. For his services, though, Tsangarides reportedly requested a fee of $40,000, blue-chip currency indeed for a band who at the time dealt only in red cents. "We just have to be patient with our first album and make the best of it," confessed Ulrich in a tone of voice that suggested that even then compromise was to him fast becoming anathema. "Every song we have we feel is good enough to put on the album. We don't have any filler songs," he said, in a statement that at that time at least was true. Despite the fact that one half of the band had been among its number for less than 6 months, as Metallica readied themselves to record their first vinyl LP, they were, by musical measure, a professional group. The same, however, could hardly be said of the business operation established to support them. Johnny and Marcia Zazula worked hard, even selflessly, on behalf of their charges, but the cloth they were able to cut came woven from cheap materials. All expenses were spared, from the fact that the group recorded their first album not in New York City, or even in New Jersey, but at Music America Studios situated in Rochester, a minor American city some 6 hours' drive upstate from the 5 boroughs. Despite the fact that the studio costs reflected the location in which Music America found itself, and the fact that the facility itself housed only the most basic of professional recording equipment, Johnny Z still lacked the funds to pay to record Metallica. Ever resourceful, instead he negotiated with Music America's owner and in-house producer, Paul Curcio, that the costs be spread over a period of time and paid in installments. From a professional point of view, the band that arrived at Music America in the second week of May 1983 were equipped with everything required to make a sound for sore ears. Recording music that will, for better or worse, last forever is a job of work vastly different from the blink-of-an-eye business of playing live.
Para seguir escuchando este audiolibro gratuitamente, haz clic en el enlace de la descripción y podrás escucharlo completo sin coste gracias a la prueba de 30 días de Audible.